This is a short presentation on Yule traditions by Willow Moonlight. There is a disclaimer before I begin. The story of Yule is retold from the Book of Sabbats. I highly recommend that you check this book out. It has chapters on each of the 8 Sabbats on the Wheel of the Year, and that the information here is only from one book. There are so many other books out there that you can read on Yule and on the Sabbats themselves. I encourage you to do your additional research, as some information may or may not be accurate in this presentation. So, where do our traditions come from? Well, the Virgin Goddess is where I would like to begin. During Yule, the sun god is reborn of the Virgin Goddess. He returns after the darkest night to bring back warmth and fertility. It is said that people left their lights on during the darkest night to lure back the sun god or honor the virgin birth. The word virgin, I do want to point out, has an older meaning, or various meanings even. Could be a woman who is unmarried and is a complete entity of herself. She is sexually independent, but not necessarily sexually chaste. Another definition of the virgin is an unmarried woman who is devoted to her religion. Another definition is a young maiden, a young woman. Yuletide means turning of the wheel. As you know, in pagan traditions, we have the wheel of the year, which you will see, I think, in the next upcoming slides. Basically, the wheel is turning from Samhain to Yule, and the sun god or sun goddess, depending on what tradition you follow, will be reborn once again. And there was a old Scottish nursery rhyme, the 13 Days of Yule, which came from a blend of Celtic and Norse traditions. As you know, the song, the 12 Days of Christmas, that's the origin. It has changed over the years, obviously, or the centuries rather. I want to talk a little bit about the Wheel of the Year. As you see in this picture, Yule is at the top. Technically, Samhain, which as most people know as Halloween, usually Samhain is kind of the spiritual new year. However, in this picture, Yule is at the top. And the wreath that you have seen in the previous picture, it represents the Wheel of the Year. The pine cones will represent male fertility, apples representing female fertility, bells are wish fulfillment, the cross is for protection, fire is, transformative, so like on that, as you see from the flame of the candles, and green represents fertility and potential. Lanterns represent enlightenment and hope. Pentacle is creation. There will be a new series that I'm working on called Witchy Wednesdays. It'll be a 6-part series that I'm currently working on, and I will get into what the pentacle means a little bit more. The wheel, it represents again the cycle, the eternity, reincarnation. The circle has no beginning and no ending. It just keeps going around and around and around. The Yule log, as you see in this picture here, represents, it's a phallic symbol. It's usually made from an oak or god-related tree, and 3 candles are placed in it, usually representing the triple goddess. In some variations, they'll use white, black, and a red candle. Others may use 3 red candles, combinations of red and green. They all have different, origins with their meanings. Sometimes you'll only see one candle in the Yule log, and that may be partly because people were trying to later hide their traditions as Christianity was sweeping the nation. And holly, mistletoe, and evergreens representing the intertwining of the god and goddess, the unity that is between them. In Slavic tradition, sometimes they will take the ashes of the Yule log and keep them in a cloth throughout the year for protection and fertility. In German traditions, the goddess, I have no idea how to pronounce her name, I'm very sorry, rides the sleigh on the eve of Yule, and she would distribute gifts of gold to those who follow her. She often gave it in the form of a cloth, and it was said that no one was to use any kind of rotary action on that night. Any use of the wheel was reserved for her. Gingerbread men, cookies are also popular. Ginger was a sacred herb to the sun god, and this was a popular German tradition, but it does have its roots in Roman pagan religions. The sun god, I have no idea how to pronounce his name, I'm very sorry, and I don't want to butcher it, has a festival that landed on the solstice, also known as Natalis Solis Invicti, which is the birthday of the invincible sun. He was born in a barn to a Virgin Mary. It was the sun, or sun personified, was the child of the God of all gods, and his followers continually pray for his return, which will herald a new life and life eternal for all humankind. Obviously, there's much larger history to the story, often containing political arguments and disputes. It does sound very similar, if not the same story, to the Judeo-Christian version of the story of the Jesus being born of the Virgin Mary. Also, the gift-giving tradition of Yule comes from a Roman tradition to honor the god Saturn. However, I think that gift-giving is a tradition in many different past, many different holidays and Sabbats, so it's really hard to know if they were the first ones to come up with this idea. Trees. Celtic tradition of the evergreen tree came from the Norse invaders and Druids. The trees represent the universe. The evergreen tree is sacred because it is a deciduous tree representing the goddess who, like the tree, never dies. Trees were decorated with images and objects that represent what the Celts wanted to manifest in the upcoming year. So, for example, if you decorated your tree with fruit, it was to manifest for the harvest, nuts for fertility, and coins for wealth. And it is believed that the German pagans were the first to place lights on the tree, most likely in form of candles. I have no idea how they stayed on the tree. It wasn't mentioned in the book. However, today we mostly see the electric light. And also during Yule, you will hear the story of the Holly King and the Oak King, whom are both at battle with each other. The Oak King represents the waxing year, and the Holly King represents the waning year. The Oak King would reign power until midsummer, and the Holly King then would reign power. So they didn't give the full story of the Holly King and the Oak King there, but I definitely recommend that you check out some videos on YouTube over it. It is a very interesting story and one that I enjoy reading from year to year. How do I spend Yule? I adopt some of the older traditions, such as hanging the wreath and gift giving and all of those little things that I have mentioned. Uh, it's a time to welcome the light and the darkness, and I tend to spend more time indoors doing things that I wouldn't necessarily do if it were summer. So I have more time spending indoors, like, creating things, writing, reading books, and more time for my spiritual practices. So that is what I do. Happy Yule, everyone!